Ready to dive in? We're tackling some seriously heady stuff this time. Guy Debord and his Society of the Spectacle.
Definitely heady, but also surprisingly relevant, you know?
Right. Like, even though Debord was writing back in the 60s.
It's like he could see the future, especially with how obsessed we are with images now.
Totally. So, we've got excerpts from 3 video essays that unpack Debord's book.
Plus, one that connects Plato to this whole idea of simulacra. Wild stuff.
It is wild. Okay, so to kick things off, can you give us the quick and dirty on Debord's main argument? What's this Society of the Spectacle all about?
Well, in a nutshell, Debord argued that we're living in a world where images have become kinda like the central force in how we experience life, how we relate to each other, even how we understand ourselves.
Okay, so it's not just that we look at a lot of pictures, it's deeper than that.
Way deeper. He's talking about a fundamental shift in our social reality, where the image becomes more important than the thing itself.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it. But a real-world example would help. What does this Society of the Spectacle actually look like?
Okay, picture this. You're in line for the latest iPhone release, surrounded by a ton of people, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's hyped up, but instead of like talking to each other, their eyes are glued to their screens.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Right. They're busy documenting the idea of the experience for social media instead of actually, experiencing it.
Oh, 100%. It's like that. So many concerts I've been to, everyone's more focused on getting the perfect shot or video than just enjoying the music.
Exactly. That's a classic example of what Debord was getting at. He built upon Marx's idea of the accumulation of commodities. Basically, capitalism loves to churn out more and more stuff.
Right. Always got to have the newest thing.
Exactly. And Debord's point is that we're now drowning in an accumulation of spectacles. Images are everywhere. But here's the kicker. It's not just the quantity, it's how these images change how we connect with each other.
So it's not like images are inherently bad. It's more about how they change the way we experience and interact with the world around us.
You got it. And this is where it gets really interesting. Debord argues that the spectacle alienates us from our own power, from our potential.
Hold on. I'm with you so far, but alienated how? What does that actually mean?
So it's similar to what another philosopher, Feuerbach, said about religion.
Okay, now you're going to have to explain that one. How does religion fit into this whole spectacle thing?
Well, Feuerbach believed that when we put God on a pedestal outside ourselves, we're basically projecting our own abilities, our own power onto this external force.
So instead of recognizing our own potential, we give it away to something out there.
Exactly. And by externalizing our potential like that, we become alienated from our own agency. We lose sight of our ability to act, to shape our own lives.
So you're saying that in a way, the spectacle is kind of like that. We create this world of images, and then it's like they take on a life of their own, becoming this external force that influences our desires and shapes our choices.
Right, and this ties back to Marx's idea of commodity fetishism. Basically, under capitalism, we start treating objects like their value is inherently part of them.
Instead of seeing them as products of human labor, design, marketing.
Exactly. We forget that we're the ones who give these things meaning, who give them value.
So is that where this whole feeling of being alienated comes from? Like, we lose sight of our own role in creating the world around us, both the physical objects and the images we consume.
Bingo! The spectacle encourages us to forget. It bombards us with images that sell us a lifestyle, a vision of happiness that's always just out of reach.
So we're stuck chasing these images that promise happiness, but the promise is kind of empty.
It is, and that's where John Berger's work on advertising comes in. He said that spectacle doesn't actually sell you things, it sells you an image of yourself.
Okay, I'm listening, but what does that actually mean?
Think about those people at the iPhone launch or at that concert. They're not really there to experience the thing itself.
It's more about showing everyone that they were there.
Exactly. It's about capturing that image of yourself in the context of the experience, an image that you can use to project a certain lifestyle, a certain identity.
It's all about curating that perfect image, right? Like those influencers we see on Instagram.
Precisely. And it taps into that very human desire for status, for validation.
We see those images and we think, if only my life was like that, then I'd be happy.
Exactly. It's a never-ending cycle because there's always another image, another product, another experience being sold to you as the key to happiness.
And then it goes beyond just feeling envious, right? It's like our relationships even start to revolve around this need for validation.
Absolutely. Friendships become about followers. Experiences become content. You start measuring your self-worth in likes and shares. It's like Berger was saying, the spectacle commodifies our relationships.
Whoa. So instead of just relating to each other directly, we're always performing for this invisible audience.
It's like we're all on stage now trying to project the most enviable version of ourselves.
And this is where things get even trippier because it's like we're going even deeper than the society of the spectacle.
Right. Baudrillard takes these ideas in an even more radical direction with this concept of the simulacra.
Simulacra. Okay, break that down for me. How does it connect to what we've been talking about?
Basically, Baudrillard argues that we've moved beyond a society of the spectacle and into a world of simulacra.
Meaning what exactly? Give me the 30-second version.
In this world, the line between reality and its representation vanishes. Gone. He saw it as like an evolution of signs.
An evolution of science. Okay, now you got to explain that one.
Okay, think about it this way. In medieval times, signs were seen as transparent, right? Like directly reflecting a divine order. Then you get to the Renaissance and signs become more about deception.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Think about like using stucco to imitate marble. There's still a real material underneath, but the sign is meant to deceive.
So there's still a connection to an original, even if it's being faked.
Exactly. Then, with industrialization, mass production, you enter the age of seriality. Things aren't defined by their connection to an original anymore.
They're just one in a million.
Exactly. They're defined by their place in a series. But it's in postmodernity, according to Baudrillard, that we enter the realm of the simulacra. Signs no longer even pretend to relate to any external reality.
It's like, whoa, things are getting really meta now.
Right. They become self-referential, creating this closed loop of meaning.
Okay, I think I'm following, but hit me with a real-world example. What's a simulacra?
Ever heard the saying, the map is not the territory?
Sure, but how does that relate?
The map is a representation of the territory, right? What Baudrillard is saying is that we've become so reliant on maps, on models, on simulations, that we've lost touch with the actual territory altogether.
We're living in a world of maps, but we've forgotten what the actual landscape even looks like.
Precisely.
It's giving desert of the real from the Matrix.
There you go. The idea that the Matrix, the simulated reality, has become so pervasive that the real world outside it has become barren, almost unimaginable.
Which is funny because one of the video essays we watched mentioned that the Wachowskis who directed The Matrix were super into Baudrillard.
Totally. But Baudrillard himself wasn't a huge fan of the film. He thought it was a little too simplistic.
How so?
Well, he thought it fell back on this classic Platonic dualism. Like there's this true reality, the real world outside the Matrix that we can escape to if we can just see through the illusion.
So for Baudrillard, there's no red pill, no way to step outside the simulation and back into reality.
Right. He'd say there's no outside anymore. We're fully immersed in the simulacra where reality and simulation are inseparable.
So where does that leave us? If we can't escape, if we can't tell what's real from what's not, does anything we do even matter?
That's the question that haunts Baudrillard's work. If everything is a simulation, even resistance might just be another part of the spectacle.
So it's like we're doomed.
Yeah.
That's kind of a bleak outlook.
It can feel that way, but this is where I think it's important to revisit Debord. He offers a more, well, I think more hopeful perspective.
Okay, so if Baudrillard says we're stuck in this simulated reality, what's the more hopeful take that Debord gives us? Because it sounds like they're both talking about how images and reality get all blurred together, but maybe Debord sees a way out.
You've hit on a really key difference between them. Remember how Debord talks about the spectacle like it's recovering the territory? It's not that he's saying everything is fake.
It's more like there's still a real world underneath.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that we've built this, well, this elaborate and maybe not so great version of reality right on top of it.
So there's still a territory we can engage with, even if the spectacle is trying to cover it up.
That's the idea. And that's where his 3 levels of spectacle come in. Remember the first level, all those flashy appearances, the media, the technology, that constant flood of images.
Oh yeah, that's the stuff that's impossible to ignore, especially these days.
Exactly. But Debord says underneath those appearances, there's a second level. The social relations those images are shaping, especially the ones that capitalism is pushing.
How we're always buying and selling and consuming and comparing ourselves to each other.
You got it. It's all about, like, who has the most stuff, the newest stuff, the best image.
Which then creates that third level,
Yeah.
like, what do you call it, historical reality.
Exactly. And this is the really profound part. Debord says the spectacle alienates us from our own history, from our power to actually shape the future.
It's like we become spectators in our own lives, just passively accepting whatever's happening instead of like actively making choices.
Exactly. It makes us feel like history's over, like there's no alternative to the system we're in. But Debord says, no way. He believed we can reclaim our history, we can break free from that passivity.
Okay, but how? If the spectacle is everywhere, if it's so embedded in our reality, where do we even start to resist?
Well, this is where Debord's involvement with the Situationist International comes in. This was a group of artists and intellectuals who basically wanted to revolutionize
You
society.
revolutionize, like a full-on overthrow the government kind of thing.
Not exactly. They were more about what they called situations. Basically, they wanted to shake things up, disrupt the flow of everyday life.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Situations. What did they actually do?
Think of it like those culture jamming projects you see, like Banksy's artwork, or those social media campaigns that reclaim problematic hashtags.
So it's like turning the tools of the spectacle against itself.
Bingo. One of their main tactics was something called détournement.
Détournement. That sounds intense.
It's basically taking something that's already part of the dominant culture, an image, a slogan, a logo, and recontextualizing it, using it in a way that reveals its hidden message or flips it on its head.
Taking back the power from those images.
Exactly. It's about injecting critical thought and creativity into a system that wants us to just be passive consumers.
It reminds me of that Wendell Berry quote, do something that doesn't make sense. Love someone who doesn't deserve it. Like finding ways to live and create meaning outside of what we're supposed to do.
That's a great connection. I think both Debord and Barry would agree that it's about remembering we're not just consumers, we're creators too. So, as we wrap up our deep dive here, what are your final takeaways? What's sticking with you?
Well, it's definitely a lot to process,
Yeah.
but I think the biggest thing is this idea that even though we're bombarded with images, even if it feels like we're totally immersed in this spectacle, we still have agency. We're not just cogs in the machine. We can choose how we engage, how we respond, how we create.
Absolutely. And that's a really powerful message to carry with us as we navigate this increasingly image-saturated world.
It makes you wonder, though, what Debord would make of today's world. I mean, we're talking social media algorithms, deep fakes, the metaverse. It's like things have gotten even more complex since his time.
It really makes you think, would he still believe in the possibility of détournement, or would he say things have gone too far? It's something for all of us to consider as we move through this world of images, trying to find our own moments of authenticity and connection.